Good afternoon and welcome to my channel. It's about 20 minutes after 12 in the afternoon, and today's topic is addiction and how it relates to our everyday health, how it relates to our circumstances, and what we can do about it. So a little bit of an introduction here is I'm going to be taking some great tools from Paula Friedman from her addiction recovery workbook, and also just throwing some insights that I've learned through my recovery and through my addiction itself. An introduction. For me, I am a crisis and trauma addiction coach and counselor, and I have been life coaching since 2011. My name is Lisa, and I'm really excited to meet you and move forward. Sorry the camera is not in view of me, but you will meet me very soon. So in the introduction in her book, she is saying that humans are complicated creatures, and there's no doubt about that. We have brains, bodies, and emotions that don't always work with one another. So when things go wrong, we have trouble looking at the whole picture and tend to focus on just one of these parts, even though it's not exactly breaking news that our minds and bodies are interconnected. And although the concept of body-mind health has been touted as a trendy new wellness craze, humans really have been benefiting from focusing on their mind and body for centuries. And I believe that we need to incorporate not just our body, mind, but our souls. Our souls play a big impact on our recovery as well. So in her book, it says Western healthcare has been stubborn about looking at the bigger picture for a long time. It says that we've used medical model of treatment, which involves pinpointing a specific symptom and then treating it as an isolation. For just as long as addiction treatments did this, and really just have continued to focus purely on the person's drug use or drinking without considering the context in which the addiction developed. So I personally believe it's from crisis trauma that an addiction can develop. Boredom that I like to say can lead you to an addiction. Any crisis or loss plays a huge factor in addiction. But she goes on to say, unfortunately, we haven't learned that this method does not work for long-term recovery because it only treats a person at the surface level. And to truly make changes, long-lasting changes, we must go deeper and start at the healing source of the problem. So a lot of people are dual diagnosis. A lot of people have not just an addiction, but they also are struggling mentally. There's many different levels that people have an underlining history, like of trauma or grief and loss, chronic pain conditions, job dissatisfaction, and she goes on saying that like family tension and symptoms of depression, bipolar disorder, and anxiety. And drugs and alcohol, are often just the parts people see from the outside. So treating at the surface level won't change what drove the addiction in the first place. She goes on to say addiction does not develop in isolation, but rather as part of a complex puzzle. To recover from an addiction, you have to look at the whole puzzle and heal each piece, not just the piece involving drugs or alcohol. So, I had a colleague that believed that there was no underlining issues that would lead someone to addiction, and I completely disagree with that because myself, I'll use as an example, when my mother passed away, it kicked in an addiction of gambling that was at a level of absolute craziness where I couldn't stop, and it escalated because I believe I didn't walk through the pain. I just kind of like went around it, and it escalated into a scary situation for me, where it dragged on for years, and it really put a lot of tension in my family, and probably even fright to them and to myself. So addiction is a really powerful stronghold, but if we treat not just the addiction, but the underlining issue, why this addiction has developed, and this is treating the body, the mind, and the soul to have a complete recovery. This in itself is, in my opinion, is a complete full recovery of all things. You need to walk through things and get counseling, therapy. Sometimes a dual diagnosis can be treating your depression or bipolar and addiction. It is definitely something that needs to be addressed on a wider scale. So I really like what this author and psychiatrist Paula Friedman has to say. So Paula Friedman, she is a clinical psychologist who specializes in anxiety disorders, addiction, and eating disorders. So she's worked in a variety of settings, including community mental health clinics, schools, hospitals, and chemical dependency centers. And she currently is providing individuals, and connect. She is currently providers individual and connect with their inner wisdom and eventually life. Dr. Friedman lives in Chicago, Illinois with her husband and dog. And she really is an amazing psychologist. She really breaks down understanding addiction in her book. So if you're listening to this, you're probably sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. and you're ready to focus on things that you care about in life without trying drugs or alcohol. You're ready to do something great. You're ready for the recovery process, and you're ready to create a plan to stay in recovery for the future. And I'm so proud of you that you have decided to make the choice to be sober and to walk through the things that have brought you here. So understanding addiction recovery is a journey. The journey ahead, there's going to be hills and valleys, bridges and tunnels, and many forks ahead. And as you begin to understand how you're going to navigate the twists and the turns ahead, I want you to think about what it looks like in the future to be sober and what the effects it's going to have on you and those around you, your loved ones. What does that look like? Addiction, like all health conditions, both physical and mental, develops from a combination of biological and psychological, social, and cultural factors. And no single factor is responsible for causing an addiction. So genetics and chemical activity in the brain influence a person's susceptibility to develop addiction. In psychology, addiction develops in a way to cope with painful life events. So growing up in a home that is filled with drugs and alcohol and trauma, the rate goes up of your risky behavior. So it actually is a physical sickness if you continue to use despite knowing that you're drinking or drugging. It's causing you a physical sickness, and it's worsening your physical or mental health. This is really critical to you getting sober by walking through what's going on. So growing up in a household or a community where people use drugs and alcohol to deal with their problems can influence a person to develop an addiction. So if you're a parent or a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle taking care of a child, and your lifestyle revolves around addiction, that child has a huge, tremendous draw to that parent or that adult, that's how they deal with life. Their addiction helps them handle life, and that in itself is going to send that child spiraling out of control. It's really important as we move forward in life that we realize dependence on alcohol and drugs is not the way to handle life. And typically, when someone becomes dependent on alcohol or drugs, their using starts to impact different parts of their life. It can impact their jobs, their relationships, their family, their kids, whomever they are around. It really impacts the family. It impacts them, how they handle things as they're moving forward. And it also really plays havoc on the mind of the user. So I wasn't sure if our video stopped, but I guess it didn't. So there are 12-step programs out there. There's AANA. There's Gamblers Anonymous. Excuse me. There's many different programs out there. There's things for sex addiction, food addiction, and they all reflect on recognizing the purposes behind using your behavior, using behaviors. So all behaviors have a purpose, whether we recognize it or not. Otherwise, we wouldn't behave that way. Here are some of the behaviors people commonly use to manage stress: alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, painkillers, opioids, cocaine, methamphetamine, psychedelic drugs, having sex, watching pornography, masturbating, watching TV, playing video games, gambling, cleaning and organizing, using social media, shopping, eating when you're not hungry, dieting, exercising, sleeping, gossiping. There's so many of them. Cutting or harming yourself, using prescription medication that's not prescribed to you, isolating yourself, and there's many others, but those in itself is a long list of the way people cope with day-to-day life, and it really is toxic, and it is really putting a stronghold on your brain and your body, because eventually it kind of adapts to the situation. Your body, your mind is adapting to whatever you're feeding it. So I'm going to stop right there, and we're going to go to part 2 tomorrow. And what are we going to do about this? And how do we address this huge elephant in the room that is holding on to me like chains? Because that's what it is. You're chained. You're in bondage. It has a stronghold on you, as it says in God's word. These addictions are just, we're flaming the fire every time we use it. We're taking a step back, and we're not in a successful moving forward flight. We're actually grounded. And I'm using an airplane. You're stuck on the airplane, you're belted in, and it's not going anywhere. You're on the plane, but you're just not moving. You're not taking off. You're not flying. So you're stuck, and you're just stuck on the tarmac. And you have your bags packed. You want to get sober, but you're just not ready to unpack, and you're not ready to tell the pilot to go ahead. Let's go. So what do you do to make that move where you are tapping the pilot on the shoulder and letting them know that you're ready? Come back tomorrow and I'll show you how. Thanks for joining me. Have a blessed day.